It was spring, just like today. That time, I was not thinking in the data surrounding me, thanks to system analysis. However, I was still the blank spot for myself, though I was trying to fix it somehow. It was just before I started my therapy that I created my first big schema. Yes, I'm a fan of schemas, and this part of the video will be all about schemas because it's funny and it's easier. So this one was a rough approximation because, well, unfortunately and luckily, I couldn't and can't cover all the human world, not mentioning the anything. Still, I find it useful and comforting. So, the schema is called the human and the world, and it's like that. It's its origin. Of course, I'm going to show you the appropriate picture. As you can see, the human is the center in this schema because everything starts with him. No matter what I read, no matter what I studied, or whom I observed, it was always about a specific person, his mental and less physical health, and the projections of his inner world onto the outer world. So, the human is expressing himself through, and here I thought of some categories. The first one that I added was sign. As you know, the simplest static thing in our world, human world, let's say. And well, of course, I combine them in groups, in systems of signs, like logic and like history, as a combination of causes, events, consequences, and dates, and other stuff, etc. But the signs are useless if we cannot do anything with them. So I added a field of instruments. Let's say they mean something like communication, or better say in our terms now, acts. So it's not just the field of instrument systems, but act systems. Combining instruments and signs in a specific how way, in other words, in a specific to be way, I got institution systems. Let's say an institution is a specific way to organize things. Sometimes it could be something abstract like traditions and customs. Sometimes it could be something formalized like laws. For example, in international affairs, it can be both. The United Nations plus its atmosphere, its values, and its, well, little possibilities to truly act. Or it could be unspoken rules, like neorealism approaches in government or country behavior. However, to be honest, the international affairs are much bigger than some kind of house. By the way, I can compare these institutions, these hallways, with a hallway from A to B. So we have a hallway here, just to get from this point to that point. And the international affairs, from my experience, is something like a combination of different ways to connect A and B, not just one hallway. And actually, there are more systems in our world that are just like that. For example, nature, or even philosophy, though it's kind of limited. Still, there were some big systems, so I created the field of the systems. Again, remember about the illustration with A and B and hallway. We will need it in the next episode. However, I missed something. This schema reminds me of sandcastle that could be easily demolished, vanished because of a simple wave. And actually, now I know that I missed the detail that called a wave. So I added the field of the system of meanings. And here you can say not only our structures, our gestalt, and examples of gestalt of different complexities, but also some other additions. But let's start with the gestalt comments. We can say that our sign is a figure. We can add that our instrument is an act. We can see in an institution an image, or even a subpersona, but it's better say that a system is a subpersona. And actually, we can say that a system is a gestalt. And while being an open gestalt, meaning having a figure that is acting against the background, it's a system. And while being a closed gestalt, like just a wave without figure, or just, a circle, it's a net. Finally, I'm keeping my first promise and showing you the true system. However, I have some buts to add. So the true system, as in this description, is an open gestalt where we have a figure that is acting, but actually it's a frozen state, and the things that we observe in our human world and in world are not frozen. They're all in the process, or it's better say in an endless sequence of the states of being and of acting, like that. Let me illustrate it with the government example. So we have people of a specific country as a background. We have organizations like ministries and specific laws as the coordinate systems, and we have officials as the sequence of choices of the main wave that are the figure against the background, and we also have let's say big bosses as the figures on the figure, but it's a frozen state because in its process there are more just one wave to connect people and to act in even this coordinate system, because every person in this wave, every official, is connected with different other persons, creating a net, and it's all happening in a net way, or to be more specific, in a net system duality. Yep. So it's a really complex combination. That's it. Okay, and some details like ping-pong issue and mirror issue I'll discuss in the next episodes. And the last one, the multiple meanings. So the multiple meanings are the result of our model being I-centric, because this or that thing, meaning this or that, depends on the combination of subjective and objective ways to see a gestalt out of this thing, or to see a gestalt that contains the thing as the background or figure. Well, cause, again, everything in our world, especially in our human world, boils down to a specific person expressing himself through gestalt making. Back then, I was working in the Eurasian Economic Commission because I was really attached to the idea of integration that is working. And I wanted to see the how core of it. That time, I was not aware that I needed this example in order to understand what's going on in me. And unconsciously, did I create 3 categories of gestalts or inner parts based on the processes I observed in the world of economic integration. But finally, not so long ago, I recognized the connection between this process and the categories. So I created one more schema. However, I'm aware that I need more time to examine this idea. Still, I'm ready to share with you the first outcomes. So the schema, the integration. Here we have 3 columns. The first one is about gestalts of different complexities plus 2. The second one is about the current classic stages of economic integration plus 1 more addition. And the third column consists of illustrations I made based on the explanations from the fourth part of the video about the anything dimension. So, the background for all the trade in the world is the World Trade Organization with tons of regulations and agreements aiming to create a non-discriminative, transparent, open trade area with fair competition. And it's a really big, complex, and interesting topic. So if you dare, visit their website and try not to think. However, the main idea that we need here I have just announced. The World Trade Organization is the background for the world trade. It's a rough approximation because there are some countries that are not still the member states, and there is some kind of shady business that doesn't care about the rules. However, let's pretend that we're talking only about countries, and the WTO practically covers the topic. So we have the WTO with its regulations, and it's pretty good. However, some countries like to communicate with each other a little bit closer due to different factors and reasons. Say they share a border and historically trade a lot. So they eliminate or decrease customs duties on the product they produce. aka they form a free trade area. Nothing more, just a little bit better conditions for each other. They still, each of them, uses its own approach to communicate with other countries. That's it. Let's see how we can illustrate it with the help of points and moving points. We're going to use this first big circle schema, but before that, I advise you to imagine another variant of the illustration. Do you remember how the anything looks like? Good. Imagine that this one-dimensional endless world is the WTO with its regulations. Picking up any point there will be like picking up any, let's say, country with its trade regulations. There is still a part of the WTO. Drawing a line between this country and another one means forming a free trade area. In other words, this point is moving to another position with a probability to become another point. However, do keep in mind that this point can connect with any other point in this one-dimensional world in accordance with its wishes and needs, just like our country, still being a part of a free trade agreement. So now you have this picture in your head, and please don't forget it, we'll need it really soon. And actually I was too lazy to draw it, so let's look at my variant. If it helps you somehow, I drew this variant based on from the position of the I to I dimension. Here we have a violet circle as a background at the WTO. F1 and F2 are the figures on this background. And the green top way from F1 to F2 is a free trade area. That's all. And remember that F1 can go to any other position, any other point, and it will do so because F1 is a free and proud point. Sometimes a free trade area is not enough, and our countries decide to unite their customs territory into one so that their goods have a free access to it. Plus, the countries, apply now the same duties and regulations to the external world. In other words, they're creating a customs union or their own gestalt, like this violet circle against some kind of rose plane. And actually here your illustration where the WTO is instead of the anything dimension suits better. So we have this rose plane, the WTO, and the Gestalt circle, another dimension. Well, now we have a two-dimensional world here, yeah. So now, in order to communicate with another point, F1 will need to act in accordance with the customs union, in accordance with the whole Gestalt and circle. In other words, its highway will be a Gestalt plus act way. Sometimes a customs union is not enough. So our countries create a common market, which means free movement of goods, services, capital, and persons. In other words, it's like creating a zone free from barriers. Or I'd rather say a 0 point. So this example, this parent, goes for an image. At its simplest illustration, you can see on this circle the yellow-violet line between F1 and F2 is one variant of the illustration, and I also have a separate illustration on the right. You can see a point going to another point with the help of an act through the I to U plus I to V dimensions. And it's like going through a hallway from A point to B point I mentioned in the previous episode. Sometimes even a common market is not enough, so our countries create an economic, plus in some cases monetary union, which means that now our countries coordinate their economic and fiscal policies. In other words, now they not just having one way to communicate with each other freely, but they do form another approaches, another ways to reach to each other. And this goes for a subpersona. The simplest illustration of it is on your left. There are 2 points connected with each other in 2 different ways with the help of 2 0 points, or let's say 2 I2U plus I2V combinations. Sometimes that is still not enough. And our countries decide that they're ready to become one big family. And they create a political union. And it's a great net, greater than any stage I have just mentioned. Though, all the stages are really complex and involve lots of people, knowledge, stuff, and things. Yep. So I drew the simplest example of a two-dimensional net. It seems like the points here are situated close to each other, but they don't need it. In fact, they can be on different planets and still be connected, thanks to the 0 points, the azure points here. And also, each point here can be both a part of any gestalt and a 0 point, like the example in the middle, the green azure one. Moreover, the gestalts can be combined in different ways, like the purple one can go to the red changes into the green, and the green combines with the purple. Or like our subpersonas, when you stop and stare and decide to act from the position of awareness. I already said that the tree schema is my favorite one. And here is another reason why. I really like walking in the forest and watching the trees. And they are so different. There are those with a straight main stem and lots of thin branches like aspens. There are those with massive branches surrounding a strong stem, like my favorite oak. And there are those with tangled crown and lots of thin stems, like dracaenas I've seen in Algiers. And they are all so like the souls that can be a subpersona plus lots of gestalts, or some subpersonas, or that can contain lots of images. But still, they are all so beautiful. Now that we've figured out how the soul is constructed with the help of its simplest elements, how these elements look like, and where the projections could be found in our human world, let's move back to the individual matrix. There is a thesis in psychology that no one else but the person can change himself. Finally, this thesis gets its scientific explanation with the help of the soul theory. Okay, back then we finished our discussion, my monologue, with the definition of the conscience. I'll remind you it. The conscience is a complex of soul functions to combine into gestalts, individual and collective information that is gathered through a choice made by the brain or any other point in the matter space that's somehow connected with this soul. Do you wanna guess what it is? Now that you know about the dimensions, about the Gestalt plus act things. Okay, I think it's better to say that the conscience is a soul acting in or through the I to U plus I to V combination. A place where a choice is going from the inner space to the matter space and vice versa. A place where the choice is made based on the soul structure plus data or the collective information, and in the last case the choice is made with the help of the reverse gestalt made into the inner space before going to the matter space. This two-dimensional world is the place between the soul and the body plus minus brain to play ping-pong among these two items. Literally, I mean the real ping-pong game. In order to change the soul structure, I really like the idea I heard from Tatiana Chernigovskaya that the whole evolution on our planet is all about gaining such a wonderful instrument as our brain. Because without the brain, it would be really hard to play ping pong. Without the brain, it's like your game opponent is a wall, a body, some particles, and it's harder to change your soul structure, but well, it's easier to calculate the reverse wave. Some pluses. So the brain helps us not just to gather lots of information, but I'd rather say to identify a hallway in the inner space for a wave of your soul structure to go with the help of the information gathered from the matter space. So it's not the only function, but the brain helps us to change this way or change its direction. I don't know for sure. Well, however, I can guess for sure that during a dream or a trance, the surface to play ping pong with our brain becomes bigger. I mean, our brain concentrates more on the I to U plus I to we combination more than on some triggers from the external world. So look at the schema. I made it less complex to focus your attention on the I to U plus I to we combination being as the conscious. To be honest, I'm not sure which variant of waves is correct. I didn't think that deep, so I just drew both. Still, it reflects the main idea of how to combine the individuals in a world and the anything dimension net system into whole. You may ask what happened to my love story. Well, it was a fiasco. Back then, I asked myself, how can I become better? And who am I? Because, I needed to know what I was going to fix. Actually, I was pretty aware of the last question answer. It was even enough to end my regular therapy, but magically, it was still not enough. Going deeper and deeper down myself, I discovered my soul space. Well, the smallest part of it that I could actually visualize. It's a place that I can use during a deep trance in order to see, contact, or be this or that inner part. Well, it's quite a convenient instrument, I must say. It can be any place, literally. For me, it's an embassy territory in Mauritania, because I spent there my childhood and it was quite secure. For you, it can be, I don't know, maybe your parents' house, you feel safe. Or maybe your secret place you used to play when you were a child. Or maybe some location from a film or even a game that somehow is interesting for you. But I was looking for my answers not just in myself, but trying to do it everywhere. Even digging into science. One day I even decided to look behind the Big Bang in order to understand how my soul was constructed. Because, I didn't want to be just a believer. I needed the proof that the soul existed. And well, I was hoping that I'll find the answer where had I turned wrong. And that's how I found the Gestalt solution for the anything. It was practically, but still not enough. Some accidents happened in my life back then, and I suddenly found myself sitting next to my therapist again and feeling a 0 point, giving me a choice to go the same route or to not. I decided to go and to see the blank spots that I might miss the first time. And I was aiming to make new choices. Some time passed, seems like centuries. And finally, I could say, it's enough. I'm already enough. And I feel this enough with the whole my soul. And I'm really grateful to my therapist, to this person who was so brave enough to walk the whole way with me and to be the way he is till the end. Yep. During my second round, I suddenly discovered something interesting about these annoying emotions. Actually, I didn't plan to dig deeper because previously mentioned Paul Ekman had done enough and gathered lots of details and information, and I was just okay with determining these emotions as the indicators, but 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 suddenly I clearly track gestalts combinations and my subpersonas behaving their specific way in a protective or communicative position and sharing this position plus feeling combination with each other, creating a new kind of wave. Like one of the subpersonas was like this, and another was like this, and they could share their situations like this. Hoppa. Well, I hope you remember that I compared the positions, communicative and protective, with the wave. So that was for the protective, that's for communicative. And this matching actually helped me to visualize it and to see how the emotions worked and to create another schema. I hope you're not afraid of my schemas by now. I really hope. And Like with the integration schema here, I'm aware that I need some time to examine the idea. However, I'm ready to share it with you. So here we go. The base emotions. I noticed that situations in the external world for a certain inner part could be classified either as dead end or having changes. Like anywhere else, these 2 points, dead end and changes, are radical displays on the whole scale, and there is no possibility the situation will be definitely only this or that way. I'm guessing here, but it seems like that dead end is about your soul structure being or remaining the same. For example, when you repeat the same pattern again and again, barely changing it, like having the same conflict with your colleague or a family member, or maybe when you find yourself at maximum in a specific condition, specific hallway, and feel like held down in it. So dead end is always about not okay, because there is no changes. And changes are okay or not okay for this or that inner part. They could be both ways. About the emotions, I think there are the base one here, but they're just the base most known and representative labels. I think you know that there are lots of shades of these emotions. I'll start with sadness, for which I have 2 examples. Every time I changed another country, I lost a part of myself. Well, not an actual part, because I think it's hard or even impossible to lose a soul. What I mean, I lost possibilities to be this or that way, to identify myself and to change in this or that way direction. That was sadness. Anger. At my previous job, I was bullied by my boss. First, my bonuses were cut off. Then there were attempts to take away my own projects. And that made me sad. But when I reached the bottom of my sadness, I felt so damn angry. And I did lots of things in return. And finally, I decided to change this situation from dead end to changes. Changes can be okay or not okay, we figured out, for your inner part. And this inner part can be in a protective or communicative way with both variants. Let's see what emotions made these conditions. Love was an indicator that I was willing to take something new that I didn't have in my comfort zone. Let's say cell structure, in other words. And I can add that love is about that this person is extremely important to your inner part and has practically the same soul structure. But actually, that point goes to any situation that is marked by strong emotions. I can't say for sure how this looks like in the inner space. I may guess that two persons having the same structure, I mean wave, and creating a hallway, a joint hallway between each other so that each of them can choose another yet so similar to his own point for his structure. Enjoyment or happiness, as you like, is something you feel being in your comfort zone. Like, I felt so much fun when I finally saw all the details and perspectives in the forest, because I could do it with the help of my high sensitivity, and I finally did it. Disgust. It's not only about food. That's disgusting, my shadow friend said when I wanted to step further with my love story. That situation was about changes, and he didn't like it because they would lead to a dead end. Well, in fact, it already was a loose situation, a dead end for him. Fear is an indicator that this certain something or someone can change something in your structure in, let's say, a bad way. Or well, destroy you, literally. I mean, end your life. Because a destruction is still a change. Well, okay. After, so many changes in my life, and thanks to high sensitivity, I can feel the exact time when a period or a relationship is over. And that's what I fear the most, to feel it with the people I really cherish. I'm lost. A 0 point. I called it enough. It's when after lots of cycles or waves, from sadness to anger, you stop, rise up your head, and see that you're done with this shit and want another variant. It's when, after cycles of fear and disgust, you admit that you're frightened and need some help. Or it's when, after cycles of choosing this person and loving him and feeling fun and comfort, you reach a fork in the road. At this point, you can change your gestalt and the combination of gestalts. I guess in other points, we can change the amplitude of the wave of our gestalt. And I think that's enough for our annoying yet so useful emotions. No. I have one more game to play for you. Look what I've got here. A slinky. And it's going to be our model for this episode instead of another scary schema. This slinky is a sol. A sol being in the inner space. Let's pretend my right hand is the inner space. And now I'm making a sol being in both in the mirror space and in the inner space, or just between them. And this state I call life. Quite simple, isn't it? Well, of course, it's another rough approximation. And here are two reasons why. First, this state, life, is not something that can be easily stopped or switched off by the soul's wish, like that. And second, I'm gonna say something that can confuse you. You see, a body that is a part of the mirror space is also a part of the soul structure. I know that we determined a soul as something that is existing in the inner space, and a body that something is existing in the mirror space. I know, yeah. But hear me out here, please. A body is just a chosen way through the mirror space dimensions, but it's still a way that is made by our wave, or gestalt, or some part of a soul. A way. Though it's still a great combination of gestalts, acts, hallways, etc. And of course, they combined into a net system. So actually, the individual matrix, that one, is a rough simplification too, because we can say that a soul is the anything making a choice and creating a great net in 10 dimensions. But it's really hard to imagine, even for me, how to draw even these nets, combinations, etc. So let's pretend that the individual matrix is still the same, that linear, and that though a body and the soul are a whole, they're still like two net systems to be, okay? Maybe this could help. Remember, any social media, it's a net in its structure. There are lots of people, but they are not all connected with each other. The main principle of its work is that you're connected to someone or some topic with lots of people that you're willing to. So you need to know this topic, and the net is just helping you to find the best way to this topic or people. Okay? Or another illustration, a really good one I've just read about, is about how our gut is working on its own, thanks to its nervous system, its own nervous system, and we're not aware of everything that is going on inside our body. Okay. Well, that's it. So even though we're keeping in mind that a soul is the anything making a choice, we still determine a soul as something, as some way in the inner space. Okay. About the choice, it can be made endless possible ways. The variation it is really enormous. Like, you can create a cell by walking the full way. First, making an algorithm for a particle to be in the matter space, then for another particle and some others, then writing an algorithm to connect these particles and to determine their changed states due to this connection. And then you just do lots of experiments, lots of them, and see all the results. And finally, one day you get a cell, maybe. And once you get it, it would be easier next time to walk this way. Maybe not stepping on this or that turn, because the result won't be that you need it. And that happens until one day something like giving a birth to a child isn't considered as a miracle, though it is, comparing to all these steps you made to create just one cell. And of course, it's another simplification, because if we could just jump from one point to another and create a cell, there won't be so many diseases we have in our world. And, well, I think we're really far from jumping from A to B. We're still going lots of ways. You may ask me the next, hey, are you trying to say that everything surrounding me is alive? Like the chair I'm sitting on, or some particles flying around in the air? Are you crazy? Well, answering this question, yes, I am crazy. I think that life is not a privilege of the one with a brain, or without it, still. But this one can evaluate the possibilities of this state and can choose a way to use these possibilities that is suitable for him to be. And that's what we actually call find the meaning of life. I said that I liked the idea of the whole evolution on our planet being all about getting a brain. But I wanna broaden this thesis right now and declare that the whole evolution is about getting all the possibilities that the state of life has. In other words, the evolution on the Earth is a specific way of developing acts. And for this event, I've got another schema, another rough approximation, ladies and gentlemen, wherever. Contact or just act evolution. Here you can see two strings forming a tunnel in order to conquer the world. Okay, let me start again. I divided the plane here into two parts, the inner space on your left and the matter space everywhere else. Approximately a soul in the inner space can transform and transform with the help of a choice making. It doesn't matter for us, well, at least now that we know nothing about the inner space, except what is how we structure. So it doesn't matter which way the wave goes, up or down. Everything changes when the wave goes on the surface in the matter space. And here I'm using our familiar protective and communicative ways as the big point of the way going here. And this approach actually makes all the evolution quite simple and funny, because it becomes something like a great sauce experiment. Well, that is carried out in like a survival mode, like in Skyrim. Well, maybe a little bit much horror mode. However, let's move back to our schema. You can see two columns and a chart between them. It's a rough attempt to classify everything in our world, in the history of our planet, into two groups of physical and psychological. So the discovery and self-preservation are physical one, and the confluence and the inspiration are psychological. Here I thought I would add that the first group was something that mattered more in the previous times for humanity, and the second group is something that is essential right now and will be more essential in the future, but if we actually survive now. Yep. The things that are gathered in these four categories are just some random things I thought of that I bumped into before. Well, not just so random. For example, I really like a reproduction as a wonderful and specific way to get yourself someone really special with practically the same soul structure, or at least one inner part. Though it's a questionable thesis. I mean, whether a child has already the same soul structure as his parents, or the parents influence that child so much he gets it. Well, there are too many factors, and these two examples are the radical displays on the whole scale, like usually. Still, I think it's more interesting to study each case in details, because well, here I thought I would say something like, oh, the truth in general makes not much sense due to its nature. It's a great tunnel where lots of ways can exist. Still, it's too big. But I thought that, well, it's a little bit of my projection here. Yep. So this tunnel is really something that, well, at least we need in order to see the whole development of the acts. Actually, government in a country, laws, morals, and ethics are the same tunnels. I mean, in structure. They're just the tunnels on this whole scale, having their limits, and every individual to due to the model being I-centric, is having his own tunnel of OK and non-OK combinations in a protective and communicative ways. The result of such great pleasure, because it's really a pleasure. You can change your tunnel, or you can change your tunnel every time and see other variants. So the result is that our world actually is full of projections, more or less. And I've just shown you one of them, my own. But we're going to talk about this a little bit later in the next episode. I have something for you still. We're lucky enough to have lots of lives, the amount of which we even can't count. But unfortunately, this life that we're having now will never, ever happen again. And we will never, ever be ourselves. This is the first and last time my body is like this. My voice sounds like this. I meet these people in these circumstances and feeling these annoying emotions. And, well, one day it will all end. And actually, the game I have for you is not about playing with the slinky, though it's funny, I know. I propose playing your life as is your last chance to be this exact way. You can make it fascinating and really fun. Though the external world is much bigger and sometimes can be really scary. Still, you have yourself. And I think that's the most interesting you will ever meet in your life. The Russian embassy in Mauritania was a big one. I'm not sure why. Maybe the Soviet government had some great plans for this country. However, when I lived there, it was empty, and the Russian policy in Africa was slack. Still, it was big enough to have a library, a bar, sports grounds, some classes, a bunker, and even an open-air cinema. There were a huge white wall and some stone rows just opposite to it, with a tiny window in the building behind the rows. This window was a part of a small room with lots of film stocks and a movie projector. though all gathering dust. But sometimes at night we picked up a cartoon, turned on the light, and the huge white wall covered in colors. In our world, there are no blank walls to get the perfect reflection of your inner world. Alas, maybe I should call this characteristic of my model not a mirror issue, but a projection. It would be so much easier if we were dealing with the anything dimension. Just an endless, some kind of rose plane with lots of points. Actually, we are, but this is the anything dimension going through 10 other dimensions. And this condition can actually drive us crazy, especially when you look around and think about all this stuff you're dealing with, not mentioning your great inner world. That's scary, I know. However, I wanna dive in this part in the nature of the projection in the anything dimension. But before that, let me try to make a small link between our everyday life and the some abstract structures we're going to talk about. I found a really good and interesting book that describes this everyday in terms of patterns and covers practically everything I want, but I can't due to my different limits speak about in details with lots of experiments, examples, and illustrations about us behaving the way we are. Not so rational, I-centric, not so aware of the acts that we're choosing, making lots of projections of our inner self on the background that actually influences us, and thinking that these projections are the only way to be. I explained the patterns in the terms of my theory. However, you will find let's say, some kind of equivalence in the Daniel Kahneman book. So this was the small link. And now let's try to answer the question, what is a projection? We are not communicating. How come? Imagine you and me, two people standing next to each other. You with your own coordinate system, history, knowledge, information, and your own structures. Me with my own coordinate system, my own information, and my own structures. You're this nut system, I'm that nut system, and we know nothing about each other except that we're the same species and can try to contact. Where are we situated in the anything dimension? Hell if I know. But in this case, it's like I am a group of points for you to go to. Well, if you're willing to go to. When we start to communicate with each other, you notice some details that identify me. Say words, gestures, facial expressions, sounds, smells, anything. And these details help you to frame this group of points, me, in other words, and create a special zone, let's say a tunnel, just like the one we've seen on the evolution schema from one string to another. A zone from you to me. Plus, you're narrowing your possibilities to express yourself. In other words, your gestalts and waves to go in this tunnel. So, you framed everything and created the tunnel. And now you can make a projection in order to go from you to me to be my group of points in some probability to be. Again, you created the tunnel, you framed me, but don't forget about two things. First, about the surrounding, our mutual background, where I'm a figure and your figure go into this figure. And don't forget about a combination of a background and you as a figure you had before you bumped into me. So, you created the tunnel with these items. Me, our mutual background surrounding you, you, and your previous gestalt. Finally, you can go make a projection of yourself with the help of the waves or gestalts. Remember our simplest examples of gestalts. Here they go. And this is where the probabilities come into play. So let me give a definition of a projection. A projection is a complex of waves of the same structure, but with different probability to be, that is imprinted on a specific tunnel between a subject, you, as a figure, and an object, me, as a figure, you're going to be with some probability to be. Well, the example with a tunnel between two strings we have on the illustration is a simplification, because in reality we're dealing with the anything in 10 dimensions and the net system, which means that every point on your wave can become a 0 point where you can change the dimensions, or you can change the gestalt, the structure, so the whole projection changes itself. Not mentioning that the tunnel is changing anytime due to new information coming. And of course, it's all happening in a net way. And plus, the probabilities are changing. When you reach my group of points, you gather some information again. Let's take a simple example. Like, I have the hair that long, and this information becomes yours with a low probability to be. Let's say it's like a quick note that there is a girl with short hair named Elena. I saw her. And maybe one day you recall this encounter and go this way to my group of points in this manner. There might be a case when you already have such group of points. For example, I'm not the first girl with the short hair you've met. So this encounter with me just increasing a little bit this group of point probability to be in your coordinate system, and it's becoming more okay. And that logic actually makes my beloved individual matrix a simplification again. You see, it's really hard to say whether this information is individual or whether it's collective, because once you reach this group of points, it became yours, but with low probability to be. How to trace the first encounter? I don't know. With my bare hand, I don't know how to do it. And that makes this characteristic to be more about probabilities. And that gives us some chances to make it more accurate and determined. But this logic adds something really useful to the base emotion schema. Yes, I know I said that that was enough with our annoying emotions, but again, that but. Let's play a little bit with them. Yeah. Do you remember that we classified all these situations in the external world for an inner part to be dead ends, changes that are okay, and changes that are not okay? So let's add some clarification here. Dead ends seem to be a specific situation on the schema. On the one hand, they're about something familiar to you, because you're repeating the same pattern again and again. So it's about a higher probability to be for a specific figure in a specific tunnel that is happening on your territory. On the other hand, they are not okay, meaning you want to overcome them. And I would guess here that dead ends are about difficulties in forming the whole gestalt. It's like you can't end it within yourself and cause of an obstacle in front of new and needed elements. Not okay changes are about something new, or let's say with lower probability to be in your net. And the tunnel is more in the outside world. Okay changes are about something new, but between your net and the outside world. However, I think we need to examine this idea. And actually, I have no clue about the probabilities calculation, and I think it's a complex question. Perhaps you do, and you have some ideas that you can share, so we at least can try to determine the border of the outside world, of the tunnel, being in the net, in your net, and the inside world more accurate. Still, the main idea remains the same. Each of us, each individual, is living in his reality and acts according to his complex of structures with different probabilities to be, and makes lots of projections of his inner self, inner world, on the outer world. Combining the subjective and objective way to see the Gestalt in the outer world. So, what I want to do? To be honest, my final goal is not to create a time machine. I want to find a manageable way to make a reverse gestalt into the inner space, and that creates more possibilities than just this one device. But, well, let's start with it. As far as I can see, in accordance with the shock theory, there are some limits. The first one, no changes. Remember, I said only the person could change himself. Because, well, the model is I-centric. It's good news, because that means we won't be able to change the soul structure of the other person. But not only this, the person himself won't be able to change it during the process of diving into it. The process itself seems to be more like recalling memories, but in details, or let's say living the exact part of life again. Actually, this is something that could happen during a trance or a dream, accidentally. Whereas I want to make it more organized and again manageable. So again, we'll get the process that is about going by a specific figure in a specific configured tunnel within a specific person's soul. Second limit, yes for the past, no for the future. I think it will be easy to time travel within the current person's life. And I also suppose that this trick will be just okay with the previous lives, though we will need some more time to tune. Here can help the principle. You can find anything as long as you know what you're looking for. However, it must be really hard to predict the future, because in this case we will need to guess the person's projections, in other words, the Gestalt's combination, and then make this projection onto the anything. Well, a cropping board, but still. And I doubt our computers will survive this. But who knows? Maybe. The third limit, only that you know. When we get accustomed with time traveling and the inner space and learn how to stop and stare, we can afford ourselves to gather more information. I mean, seeing a gestalt or gestalts in the figure or the background of the main big gestalt. In other words, of the specific person's part of life he's going during the process of time traveling. For instance, say you used to live in the Roman Empire and knew a lot about its everyday life, traditions, relations, laws, etc. And these things can be all discovered. But there is one but here. All the knowledge gathered there will be your soul's projection on the whole tunnel of the Roman Empire everyday life. So it will be a part of it. Well, you can't cover everything, sorry. In other words, this knowledge will be a combination of objective and subjective way to see a gestalt in it. And last limit, there is a meaning only in the gestalt. The process itself, time traveling, makes sense only if we're talking about the specific person's case. Because remember, the anything is just an endless dimension of random points, just being in the state of being. And it gets its meaning only when it is chosen. I mean, when the anything choose a point to be in a specific combination in 10 dimensions. And that's add another thing. If we're going to look for, let's say, a common truth there, the result will always be about the combination of subjective and objective way to see a gestalt. And this combination will depend on who is making the projection onto the anything. Me, you, someone else. But it's okay, actually, because the result we'll get will be appropriate and good enough for me, you, or someone else. So, I have some kind of algorithm to make this device, time machine. First, we need to examine the source theory. I know my limits, so that's why I'm asking you who's watching it and who's interested in it to help me, to check me, to calculate the possibilities of my ideas to be true, and to correct me where it's needed. If most of the things I said here are okay, we can try the next. We can try to teach the AI to calculate a gestalt, or at least to make more or less accurate predictions about a configured tunnel for a person's figure to go in. Remember I said that we can combine the gestalts. In fact, a soul is a combination of gestalts of different complexity, or even of combinations of gestalts of different complexity. But still it remains the same gestalt that exists in a not system duality, or gestaltic duality, or in wave-particle duality, and that is something that I suppose can be calculated and determined in mathematical terms. So this all can be calculated too, right? And the last step, we should try to find a way to connect this AI with the human brain in order them to cooperate and to dive into the inner space. I'm not suggesting here to cut the skull and experiment with poor people, well, like not against their will at least. Well, okay, let me be serious here. I know this all sounds like science fiction, and I know it's a rough plan with no guarantee to succeed. But there is one fascinating thing about it. Many people from different spheres can come together and try to make something that is supposed to be impossible. The least we can get from it is to determine what can be done in our world and what can't be. And of course, fun and pleasure from communicating with each other. But if we catch, if we find a way, a manageable way to make a reverse gestalt into the inner space, it will open up some really incredible perspectives. How about teleportation in the physical world by going to the inner space? Or how about developing medicine by calculating a gestalt that creates a healthy or unhealthy cell? Still, let's start with the cell theory examination. I will start this last episode with some boring abstract stuff, and then I'll raise slice of life questions, okay? Well, of course, okay, it's my monologue after all. So, the anything is an endless, some kind of rows playing with lots of points in it and with different possibilities to be. These points already exist in different ways to exist. The anything chosen to be this or that point may be any combination in 10 dimensions. These dimensions already exist in different ways to exist, being a figure going against the anything as the background. This anything going through 10 or less dimensions exists in a net system duality or Gestalt duality. This anything, a specific one, going through 10 or less dimensions, I called a soul. The state when this way, the anything going through, contains the mirror space dimensions in a specific period of time, I called alive. While being in this state, if this anything point is considered as a system, the whole way, the whole net can be divided into two: a body in the mirror space and a soul in the inner space, though it remains the same, the whole Gestalt. The soul already exists in different ways to exist, with different possibilities to be, which the soul structure already contains. These possibilities' existence depends on the exact period of time. But here is a fun fact. There is actually no time at all. The life that we have now is just a big act of a big gestalt. In other words, a system that is chosen out of the whole net. The net that is the anything point going through 11 dimensions. When I say chosen, it means that this gestalt, this act, is being at high probability to be. Nothing more, but nothing less. It doesn't mean that everything now well can be projected and everything is tested. Though maybe it will be much easier to live that way. Maybe. It means that the content of the Gestalt background can be any. Well, with its limits. That is why we repeat the same one pattern with any person, any activity, anything. And it does mean that it matters more how we're forming gestalts, and if this how way is an effective one and helps us to close the gestalt. The soul has its limits. It is limited by itself. That's why a life is a perfect state to expand the soul's territory, to get new for this period of time points in order to form the whole gestalt and to close it. I'm talking here about communication and contact in the world. When we communicate with each other, we actually, each of us, creates a tunnel in the inner space based on the exact part of his soul, the exact period of time, and added to it new information from the person he's communicating with, the mutual surrounding, and the atmosphere. And once we create this tunnel, we can, and we do, we are going by a figure in this tunnel in order to close the gestalt. In other words, we are making the projections. There are such things as triggers. I would say indicators of wounded places where this tunnel cuts our figure, so we couldn't complete our gestalt. And that's why we're repeating the same scenario again and again in order to heal this place. There are some indicators to see if this way to form a gestalt was an effective one. The first one is that this new gestalt you're forming right now differs from the previous one in structure. The second are these annoying emotions. They're quite useful and they really can help us. You know, as far as I can see, as far as I can observe the human history, we haven't gone too far. I might be wrong though, but if not, aren't we tired of it? I know that we can't stop wars or poverty on a whim. And even if we try hard enough, I'm not sure we'll succeed. However, I'm sure that if we pay more attention, more than we do now, to each individual, the world will become different, and even maybe better for each of us. And actually, that's the only thing we can do. Pay attention to myself. Try to see the way I am and treat myself the way that is okay for me. Because the model stays I-centric. which means that everything in this world is about each individual expressing himself through a gestalt making in accordance with his inner world, and no one else but the person can change himself. You know, I might be wrong in something. I might miss something. I know a little about my limits and my projections. That's why I'm asking you to help me to find out if the story I've just told you reflects the objective world, or if it is my own self-adventure.